The following video is extremely politically incorrect. It may contain concepts and ideas that would offend people who treat their politics like their religion. Viewer discretion is advised. Now, I've decided to put, before this video, sort of a summarization of all the points that I'd like to make in this video. You can choose to proceed and watch this video to the end if you so choose, but I understand that some people have a very short attention span and would prefer really just to hear it really as it is. I've watched this video to the end. I've watched the whole 25 invisible male privileges video, and I think that it is, I really am just going to summarize my thoughts right here, right now on it. This video basically highlights the benefits that, a target demographic would receive, like, on a piece of media. For example, if, a piece of media was built and designed for girls, it's going to be assumed that that media is viewed exclusively or largely by girls and so on. So, I really just want to put it this way. The benefits that they point out really aren't a problem. And the reason why I say this is because with women, in women's magazines, they cater to women as well, and we have seen almost no objection to the depictions of men in women's magazines. And to be perfectly honest with you here, I find it very inconsistent how that these people have chosen to, of course, whitewash that and only show half the story. Just to call them as I see them here, I think this is just a demonization of male space where, people like Anita Sarkeesian are essentially saying that, these so-and-so thing is objectionable and it shouldn't happen. And I honestly find this laughable because, women in, spaces and in media that they enjoy really do receive quite a few of the benefits put out, on this video. They do receive about 23 of the benefits, the so-called concrete benefits, in their own sort of media directed towards them. So I think the way I can summarize this is that it really isn't a problem. If you think about it, it just isn't. Some people may disagree, but you can watch the entire video if you like. Feminist frequency. Intellectually dishonest, a money whore, and a complete pain in the ass. Let's begin.
Many women have courageously spoken out about how they experience alienation and harassment in gaming.
Hi there, John McIntosh. You got a pretty good moustache on you. And could you name one?
Despite this fact, too many male gamers dismiss the issue as no big deal. And
well, I'll put it this way. Women in games like, for example, Multi-Theft Auto, and in a great many gaming communities, are a tiny, tiny minority. Go onto any TF2 server, listen to the voice chat for a while, and, yeah, you won't see too many women in the voice chat.
Insist that there isn't really a problem. One of the luxuries of being a member of a privileged group is that the benefits afforded to us often remain invisible to us.
Like American white women who have the audacity to say that they're being unfairly paid, while for every one woman who dies in the workplace, 9 men will follow her. I mean, I can see where you're coming from there, especially since they don't have to sign selective service and be sent off to war should it ever happen. I mean, yeah, I get your point there.
Working towards solutions requires that male gamers become aware of the ways in which we unconsciously benefit from sexism.
Well, you'd best hope that these are really, really sexist benefits.
We can't work to fix something unless we first understand its effects. With that in mind, the following is a checklist of some of the concrete benefits that male gamers automatically receive simply for being men.
Well, my respect for you depends on how concrete these benefits are. Let's begin.
I can choose to remain completely oblivious or indifferent to the harassment that many women face in gaming spaces.
Women can remain completely oblivious to the fact that for every one woman who dies, 9 men will die on the workplace before she dies once. I mean, yeah, women can also remain oblivious to the fact that the majority of child soldiers are, what was that demographic who aren't women? Oh yeah, men.
I am never told that video games or the surrounding culture is not intended for me because I am male.
Well, if you go into a women's underwear section, you will be told that the surrounding culture is not intended for you, that the product is not intended for you. I mean, how is that a benefit or even remotely wrong if you target a certain demographic of people with a product? I mean, I don't get how that's wrong or remotely sexist. I mean, women's media targets women, and things like TF2 and CSGO target men. How that's wrong beats me.
I can publicly post my username, gamertag, or contact information online without having to fear being stalked or sexually harassed because of my gender.
Oh, God. If you put your contact information out there, you know, you can easily attract crazies regardless of what gender you are, and you're extremely naive, really, to say otherwise.
I will never be asked to prove my gaming cred simply because of my gender.
One example.
If I enthusiastically express my fondness for video games, no one will automatically assume I'm faking my interest just to get attention from other gamers.
Simply put it here, people who play games don't make a humongous deal about how they so love something. You know, like how they so love a game. You know, for example, the kid who says, "I love gaming," and does that, you know, all the time. Those people do it for attention. People who enjoy games just flat out play them, and that's that.
I can look at practically any gaming website, show, or magazine and see the voices of people of my own gender widely represented.
Simply put it, in women's media and in the fashion industry, the voices of women, the opinions of women, and their views are widely represented. I don't understand how this is actually wrong. In an industry that is dominated by, for example, teaching, the voices of women do receive precedence over the voices of men. You know, in, like, I don't know really how to put this. I don't see how that's necessarily wrong. If a demographic of people is the vast majority of, you know, a consumer of media, you know, how is it wrong that you hire people who can relate to those people? If you want to attract a demographic of people, and men are a pretty good demographic to attract, you know, how is it wrong to hire people that are, you know, that can relate to that demographic? For example, in women's magazines, how, like, is it wrong that women, you know, are the majority of the staff? Because no one understands a woman better than women do. You know, women have a very good idea how to relate to other women, and they have an ability that men don't have. You know, when you relate, like, women can relate better to women, men can relate better to men. So, you know, it makes sense that you're going to have, you know, of course, a disparity in gender when it comes to people in the industry. You know, people who love doing things. For example, like, let's say, Gabe Newell loved games, and so he made a company. So really, you know, you're going to see more people who love video games doing that job and making companies than you are going to see people who don't do it and then make companies. But that's a bit of a ramble.
When I go to a gaming event or convention, I can be relatively certain that I won't be harassed, groped, propositioned, or catcalled.
Yeah, I would probably say that's a little bit ignorant, since there's a growing number of homosexual people who are more open with that than ever before, and there's a lot of people out there who probably would catcall you. I believe there are many gay men who would catcall you. Just my opinion.
By total strangers.
I will never be asked or expected to speak for all other gamers who share my gender.
One example.
I can be sure that my gaming performance, good or bad, won't be attributed to or reflect on my gender as a whole.
This sometimes does happen, but it really doesn't happen a lot at all. I've played, you know, I've been in many communities online, and I've spent vast amounts of time playing about on communities like the Community of Integrity and Transparency. I've hanged around on MTA. I've played Gary's Mod for nearly 1,000 hours. take it from me, those things sometimes happen, but they're really not as common as a lot of you would say they are.
My gaming ability will never be called into question based on unrelated natural biological functions.
Again, that one really doesn't happen either. I mean, if you have, merit in a community, if you're a, female programmer and you're very good at it, generally speaking, almost all of the time, you'll be accepted into a community. If you have merit, you'll be accepted. If you don't, then you won't. I mean, sexism does exist within the gaming community, but I'm really going to take a point of just disagreeing and saying that it's anywhere near as common as you would like to say it is.
I can be relatively sure my thoughts about video games won't be dismissed or attacked based solely on my tone of voice.
Alright, mate. That one is just flat out wrong and falls right on its face. I went onto a TF2 server and used an Indian accent that sounded something like this. Hello, can I take your order, please? And, I got kicked off in about 5 seconds. And this was consistent across, consistent across servers. I used an Indian accent, I used a Russian accent, I used a sarcastic sort of, tone to my voice, and I got booted quite a few times. So, I'd hardly call that one exclusive or even largely directed at women. I mean, it's happened to me quite a few times, so I really think that what you just said there was bullshit.
Even if I speak in an aggressive, obnoxious, crude, or flippant manner.
People online and, owners and moderators of communities, they don't tolerate people's bullshit. They don't have to when they don't, so they get rid of them, and that happens quite a lot.
I can openly say that my favorite games are casual, odd, non-violent, artistic, or cute, without fear that my opinions will reinforce a stereotype that men...
You know what, I'm getting sick of this. If you play games, if you play any games, whether it be Bubble Witch, if you play them maybe, 10 minutes a week, then you're someone who plays games on a substantive basis. I'm done with the whole thing related to real gamer or not a real gamer. If you play games at least sometimes, you're a fucking gamer, and that's that.
Men are not real gamers.
When purchasing most major video games in a store, chances are I will not be asked if, or assumed to be, buying it for a wife, daughter, or girlfriend.
Go to a store and buy My Little Pony. Because guess what they're going to think? They're going to think either you're a creep or that you're buying it for a daughter, your wife, or a sister, or whatever. This applies, to men as well. Women, generally speaking, do not play Grand Theft Auto 5, and that's honestly their choice. So, 9 times out of 10, or even more than that, you really aren't going to see, you can make the assumption pretty fairly that one demographic of people is not going to buy, for example, women aren't going to buy Grand Theft Auto 5, and you aren't really going to see men buying women's lingerie or women's magazines for themselves. Generally speaking, almost all of the time, it is going to be for the demographic that it's targeted towards. Well, one exception might be bronies and My Little Pony, but that's an exception. Anyways, back onto the video.
The vast majority of game studios, past and present, have been led and populated primarily by people of my own gender. And
simply put it here, more men loved gaming, and you had a greater pool of men than women who loved gaming. Some people, in that pool you have, a lot of different people. You've got entrepreneurs, businessmen, and so on. So, in that pool, there's going to be a few people who are really just insanely smart and insanely educated and insanely good at doing business. Like, for example, Gabe Newell. That guy, from the best of my understanding, loves games, and he loves doing what he does. And, because there's more men in that community, you're going to see more men rise to the top. The same way, in teaching, you see more female teachers, so you're going to see more women at the top of, teaching institutions. How that's sexist or wrong really doesn't make any sense, because, with women's magazines, you're going to see more women at the absolute top and in leader positions of those magazines. if someone could explain to me how that is wrong in a video, I would very much appreciate that. But I don't really get how that's wrong or unfair. I mean, if you have got one green M&M in a, basically in a bowl of about 600 red M&Ms, I mean, which one are you going to pull out?
As such, most of their products have been specifically designed to cater to my demographic.
I can walk into any gaming store and see images of my gender widely represented as powerful heroes, dastardly villains, and non-playable characters alike.
Great. You see the same goddamn thing in women's magazines. You see female chauvinism, so I don't really know how to put this. In, for example, women's magazines, you see single mothers and women represented as being these awesome, great little, these awesome, great heroes, and, so on and so forth. That's media that appeals to them. It's what they want. It's what they're paying for. So quite frankly, I see no problem with that. And if it's objectionable for men to do it, then if it's not objectionable for women to do the exact same thing, then I honestly have no problem with it.
I will almost always have the option to play a character of my gender, as most protagonists or heroes will be male by default.
Well, what's your point? If you have an entire demographic, for example, like if you've got like about 80-something% men who play those games, I mean, who are you going to target and who do you want to appeal to? You're not going to appeal to a very small demographic of people versus the majority. I mean, it's business. If you've got a very like, for example, let's say the Chinese wanted gold tint on the windows of an American muscle car, but the Americans, you had a very small American market, right, of a certain muscle car. Who are you going to appeal to? The bigger demographic or the little demographic? It's business, really. You have to appeal to the big group of people and give them what they want if you want to make money. Like with women's magazines, you can't appeal to men and simultaneously appeal to women. You got to make a choice and pick a demographic you want to appeal to. And to be honest, if it's wrong to appeal to certain demographics, then I really don't have a lot to say other than, that's just how business works with, media. And, it's acceptable for women's magazines to do it. It's acceptable for media that's targeted towards women to do it. And I see absolutely no reason why media targeted towards men should not do similar things.
I do not have to carefully navigate my engagement with online communities or gaming spaces in order to avoid or mitigate the possibility of being harassed because of my gender.
Simply put it, the careful navigation to mitigate harassment is being a decent human being. Generally speaking, you are not going to receive a mountain of harassment for doing nothing wrong. Simply put it, Anita Sarkeesian did a whole lot of morally reprehensible things. She took thousands of dollars from the Kickstarter, $180,000 from the Kickstarter, and made a mediocre product. She put in very little citation, she shut off all comments and all the likes and all that. She canned all discussion on the subject and created her own personal North Korea. She also went on about, poisoning the well, calling her critics evil, this and that. So, look, I'll go ahead and just say it here. People who go into a community and who are honest, fair, and fun people to be around will receive, treatments that's comparable to how they treat others. The saying, treat others how you like to be treated is, extremely relevant in this case, and it's how you're going to be treated. If you go into a community, like, for example, YouTube, like Anita Sarkeesian did, and do a whole lot of abhorrent things, you're going to be people aren't going to be very fond of you at all.
I probably never think about hiding my real-life gender online through my gamer name, my avatar choice, or by muting voice chat out of fear of harassment resulting from my being male.
Well, I hate to break it to you, but men do receive harassment for those type of things quite often. For example, Indians receive quite a bit of harassment or flack for having an Indian accent. I mean, I got kicked off several different you know, TF2 servers for using an Indian accent. So, yeah, I think it's more of a thing that would affect races than it does sexes, but yeah, we'll leave that one to something else.
When I enter an online game, I can be relatively sure I won't be attacked or harassed if and when my real-life gender is made public.
Really, women have gone into the communities that I've been a part of, identifying as women, saying that they are indeed women, and they've been perfectly fine in the majority of cases, and have got no flack or harassment for being either male or female. So, I'll put it this way here. Rarely would you see someone in an online community, from my experience and from my observations, receive flack for, you know, the fact that they're a man or a woman. You know, I think that Anita Sarkeesian and the person who I think has informed many of these concrete facts, or whatever they would like to call them, or concrete benefits, you know, I think she's using her gender as a scapegoat or as a shield from criticism. Simply put it here, you know, sometimes it is true, yes, people do receive flack for their gender, but most of the time they don't, and they very often, almost more likely than not, you know, do things that make hatred towards them justifiable. For example, in the case of Anita Sarkeesian, she's lied, she's taken money, she's done all kinds of very morally reprehensible things, and she's received harassment for them. I believe harassment is wrong, but I can understand why people are absolutely pissed off about it. And, you know, the same with TJ Kirk. He's done really stupid shit online, like the whole not productive thing where he promised a website, and that's gone down. So, I mean, generally speaking, if you go into a community, it doesn't matter what gender you are or race you are. If you've got merit and if you're a decent human being, people will, generally speaking, leave you alone. There are the odd exceptions, but I don't see that many of them.
If I am trash talked or verbally berated while playing online, it will not be because I am male. Nor will my gender be invoked as an insult.
Yes, it will. For example, wanker, douchebag, you know, how do I put this? Really, your gender will be used to insult you. Insults are targeted towards facts about you. For example, you would call, you know, an Aboriginal person a petrol sniffer. You know, if you wanted to insult a white guy, you'd call him a cracker honky ass, or something like that. You know, insults are targeted and, you know, they're designed. They're targeted towards a demographic of people, and if you're a man, you know, people will try to tailor insults to you. That really is just as simple as it is.
While playing online with people I don't know, I won't be interrogated about the size and shape of my real-life body parts, nor will I be pressured to share intimate details about my sex life for the
Yeah, you can just say no.
pleasure of other players.
Believe it or not, there are actually some communities where those type of questions are asked by men to men, but look, I'll just put it this way here. You don't have to share that information. You don't have to share any sort of information with anyone online, and you can tell people that you're not going to share it. I mean, the ball's really in your park in that particular case.
Complete strangers generally do not send me unsolicited images of their genitalia or demand to see me naked on the basis of being a male gamer.
Yeah, I'd agree with that one.
In multiplayer games, I can be pretty sure that conversations between other players will not focus on speculation about my attractiveness or sexual availability.
Yeah, generally speaking, doing that stuff all of the time is frowned upon. You know, more and more you're seeing in communities, they're really not being that much of a fan of those particular sort of actions, like the whole pickup thing. I mean, white knighting is more and more becoming something that's really just frowned upon.
In real life.
If I choose to point out sexism in gaming, my observations will not be seen as self-serving, and will...
Alright, look. Anita Sarkeesian... How do I put this? she has, of course, made several fuck-ups in her videos. For example, I was watching the whole women as background decoration thing, and she makes a few fatal mistakes where she tries to humanize non-playable characters, or things that can't even be perceived through senses. Simply put it here, the reason why people see what Anita Sarkeesian does as self-serving is the fact that she puts out a whole lot of bold assertions, and the fact that she accepts money for them. She tells people what they want to hear and then asks money for it. I think that coming to the conclusion that, you know, Anita Sarkeesian is doing this to fill her pocketbook is actually a pretty fair one. And it doesn't matter if, you know, this was Jonathan McIntosh or Anita Sarkeesian. The message remains the same, and I believe strongly the outcry remains the same. Sam Pepper did some things that were self-serving and sick, and the entire community stood up against him. It doesn't matter what gender you are. Do something morally reprehensible, and, you know, in quite a few cases, you'll get shit for it. And it doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman. If you fuck with the internet and with communities online, they're gonna do stuff to you.
Therefore be perceived as more credible and worthy of respect than those of my female counterparts.
I can't really respect people like Anita Sarkeesian, and I have the same level of respect for Anita Sarkeesian as I do Jonathan McIntosh and everyone in this video.
Even if they are saying the exact same thing.
Because it was created by a straight white man, this checklist will likely be taken more seriously than if it had been written by virtually any female gamer.
I sincerely doubt that that is even remotely true on any level. I've watched this video and I've really just... I don't really know how to actually address it. I'm going to go right ahead and say here that you've not pointed out privileges, you just pointed out simple facts of how, you know, business works and, you know, basically how people target certain demographics to make money. You've really not brought about, you know, an actual call for change. I don't really see what needs to be changed in this case. You're just basically saying, oh, this and this is sexist, and you've cut out half the picture. Like, for example, that they, you know, with media targeting people, like, you're saying that, of course, this is apparently wrong, yet it seems entirely acceptable with women's media as there's no critique of women in this video. So, I really think that this really is, to be honest here, a bit laughable.
These benefits should not be reserved for men.
They're not even remotely reserved for men, especially, you know, in, like, for example, in women's media, women receive quite a few benefits by being women. So, you know, if it's permissible for women to have these benefits while simultaneously, you know, when they don't receive criticism for it, I think it's permissible for men to have these benefits exclusively for themselves.
This is not meant to suggest that male gamers are always treated well.
Sometimes we are bullied.
Or subjected to online nastiness.
But it's not based on or because of our gender.
Sometimes it is.
In order to make change,
first we need to acknowledge the problem.
And then we must take responsibility for it as a community.
Well, I don't really understand what the problem is. You're essentially saying that... Well, basically here you've got 25 reasons, right? And the core of it is that, you know... In women's media, you've got basically the same things as that you identify as problems. For example, like, you know, how media is targeted towards, you know, women. Like, for example, in things like women's magazines, you have media targeted towards women and you have women as the staff. There's been no criticism of this, and quite frankly, I see nothing wrong with it. So I think that there are some problems in the gaming community, but I don't really agree as in, like, for example, why we should change, for example, the whole thing with men being, like, for example, because men are the majority of people who play many of the games that are on Steam and that are on many different you know, communities and all that, like the MTSA community. I don't really see how benefits that women enjoy in, you know, women's media spaces and what men enjoy, I don't really see how men should be deprived of those while women do not receive them. You know, women have received no flack for the fact that they're, you know, like, for example, women's magazines, you know, their staff are disproportionately female, and, you know, with media targeted towards men, that their audience is disproportionately male. I mean, if it's acceptable for, you know, women's magazines to hire and have disproportionately more women than men, then if this is acceptable, I see no reason at all to address the whole kerfuffle of, you know, the so-called invisible benefits to being a white male. I mean, these aren't exclusive to men. In women's magazines, pretty much all of these benefits apply to women as well, and I'm really failing to see where the actual problem is. If women were more of a part of, you know, the gaming community, if they had more dominance, the community would automatically change and benefit them over men. And in women's media, those, you know, media organizations target that media towards women, and they put things that they would enjoy, and so on. The same applies with men. I really do think that this is a problem, and if you believe that this is wrong, you're only targeting less than half of the problem.
So we can actively work together with people of all genders
to dismantle the parts of gaming culture
that perpetuate these imbalances.
All people of all genders
must be treated with respect and dignity.
These imbalances, in my opinion, are driven by one thing and one thing exclusively. Simply the demographics of people you have in these communities. If you saw more men reading women's media would change, and the company leading, you know, for example, a women's magazine would be more catering towards the needs and issues of men, and towards the things that they enjoy. These imbalances aren't driven by sexism, but rather by market forces and, you know, by demographics. Just my opinion.
Together, we can make gaming better.
Together, we will make gaming better.
Well, you've not actually really pointed out a problem. Ah, Anita Sarkeesian. Yum yum. In conclusion, really here, all of the benefits in this video, basically all of them, would apply to women in similar spaces. If you had a community that was... If you had a game like TF2 that was centered around women, and the women were the primary target demographic, you know, you would see that by being a woman you would receive these so-called benefits. You know, if you go into, like, for example, if a guy were to go into a store and buy a CD of My Little Pony, it's going to be assumed that that media is for a wife or a kid or whatever. I mean, these benefits are far from exclusive to men, and to be honest here, women experience these benefits in media that's centered towards them, and that's where they are, you know, the target demographic. So what I think here is that if this is objectionable, and these benefits, like by being the target demographic, you are going to of course receive benefits as you are the target. But I mean, if this is objectionable, then I really don't know what to say about it. It really just is. Like, if people actually object to these benefits universally across men and women's, you know, media, I do think that it's a little bit inconsistent, and you're only focusing on less than half of the problem. But anyways, I do apologize for my shambolic and unscripted rant of sorts, or I believe it could be referred to as a refutation of this video. But I hope that you enjoyed, and that you get inspired to possibly try doing some of the things I do, and this is just really a learning experience and me putting my points and ideas out there. Some people may disagree, and you're welcome to. My comment section and like ratio will be kept active for as long as I have meaningful control over this channel, unlike someone. And, you know, you can criticize my beliefs, ideas, or you can add to them, you can modify them, you can suggest additions, changes, or whatever. I mean, I've created an open forum. You can debate my ideas, you can agree with them, you can support them, you can do basically whatever you like. I prefer you don't post anything illegal or that violates YouTube's TOS, but yeah, my comment section is open, guys. Feel free to play with it. You know, leave a like or a dislike, or leave suggestions. Up to you. That's all. See ya.